Oh, there he is. Captain Lamb, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So we had a board meeting before this, and everybody just took a 5-minute break. So I'm going to give them just a second or two to come back online and show their smiling, happy, pretty faces, so that we know that everybody's back.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was just finished doing a little foot patrol downtown and had 2 share requests for the presentations or for the Google Slides. So I went ahead and shared that with Tracy and Joe, so that they could look at it also.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
Joe won't.
Hey, Alan, it's good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Yes.
So
Hi, Mike.
I think that was from Debbie to you, Mike.
Oh, hey, Debbie.
So Mike, this is recorded. We'll post the interaction and everything that we do probably sometime tomorrow or Friday on YouTube.
Okay.
So let's see. I think we have enough folks that are alive and well that we can start. Captain Mike Lamb from Asheville Police Department, thank you for giving us evening time amidst your busy day and everything else that you're doing. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you want me to start with your slides, you could just tell me that that's where you want to go, and I will bring them up and move them forward so you can focus on talking. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, we'll do the slides first, and I'll cover those, and then because the slides may answer a lot of the questions that have been brought forward, and then I'll be happy to take questions after a presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to get to your slides. I hope I do this. Everybody see that sort of in full screen mode?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Captain Lamb, it's your party. Have a good time.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I am, for those that don't know me, I'm Captain Mike Lamb with the Asheville Police Department. I am over our Community Engagement Division, which Chief Zach created in October of 2020. So I have the school resource officers, our community resource officers, and also our public housing unit. And that's everyone that's within my division. So the first thing I'll cover, as requested, is the crime stats citywide. So looking at the crime stats year to date. Now, the stats that I'm covering, so that we have a fair comparison, are January to June for the last 3 years. So 2020, 21, and 22. These are our total property crime counts for across the city, which are, you can see they're pretty comparable. You had 2452 in 2020, 2512 in 2021, and then 2508. And these are reported incidents, not calls for service. So 2508. So we're about staying level. In regards to property crime, though, one thing I want to caution you with in looking at the stats is that we definitely know there's some underreporting going on because, last year we put out the number of calls that we are not responding to, which were to keep after our resignations, to keep our response times level so that we can make it to respond to especially priority calls, crimes in progress, and do that quickly, and officers not be tied up and not be able to respond to those. So our response times have stayed pretty flat over the last year and a half. They're starting to increase a little bit. So, but I say that to say that we know there's, just in talking with residents and talking with businesses, that there are crimes that they're not reporting because they say, it's probably not going to get solved anyway. And it's just the effort in either filling it out online or just calling the police department and then having to wait a long time for an officer to respond. So that's one thing of note when you're looking at the numbers for property crime. All right, Rick, next slide. So our crime analyst, Doug Ozer, did a breakdown of crime by neighborhood. And this was as of June 2nd, 2020. So over the past 3 years, more than a third of Asheville's property crimes is committed within one of the 54 identified residential neighborhoods. While property crime is currently down 2% year to date compared to 2021, the residential areas still account for 36% of all property crime. So the highest areas looking at the neighborhoods for property crime are downtown, which is 25% of the property crime. And then East-West Asheville neighborhood has 8% of the property crime. And then you have Montfort after that with 5%, and then Wecan with 4%. You can see there in red and maroon where the high areas are, which is downtown, West End, Wecan, and then Montfort Avenue. And then you see where everything else is shaded. And you can see on the right-hand side there, the property crime numbers per neighborhood. And I've also shared this in PDF form with Rick. So I know it's a little difficult to read in the slide, but Rick, if you want to share this with the group also in PDF, so it's easier to read, you can definitely do that so they're aware of how the breakdown is property crime per neighborhood. The biggest crime to no one's surprise is larceny other, and then cars that are broken into that are not secured. So people that leave their cars unlocked and then things are taken from those vehicles. The larceny other can be a variety of larcenies, from front yard, front porch larcenies to stuff that's left unsecured. And then, of course, like I said, the number 2 there is car B&Es that are not forcible, where they're left unlocked. And then you have motor vehicle theft also. We've seen probably a car stolen a day this month. And the vast majority of these are people that pull up to a gas pump, a convenience store, a car wash. They leave their car unattended and running, and then somebody jumps in and steals the car. We had one this morning taken from a gas station on Tunnel Road. We had one yesterday that was taken from the gas station there at Haywood Road and 240 at Burton Street. Thankfully, we were able to get the car back to the owner and arrest the man that stole the car last night. He was taken into custody. Then you have burglary residential, and then commercial burglary, then shoplifting, and then forcible car B&E, and then the very just few number of arson cases. All right, next slide, Rick.
So for everybody who's in attendance, if you go to the CAN website and to the meetings page, the detailed PDF is one of the links under Captain Lamb's name, and so you can download it and look at it in detail.
Okay, so this is what's kind of alarming to me is violent crime is high across the city. 2020, we had 262 incidents of violent crime. 2021, 265. 2022, we've had 100 more. That's a big jump. The biggest jump is an aggravated assault. So this isn't just a simple assault. This is an assault with a knife, a machete, some kind of blunt instrument, or even shootings, like people that are shot but not a homicide. And these stats were pulled 2 weeks ago, so you can see our homicide was at 8, and now we're up to 11. So that's that's unfortunate that. And so the aggravated assault number will be higher also because we've had more shootings since then. And you can see the other violent crimes from there. So next slide. So right now, unfortunately, our police response times are increasing. You can see the response times from June 2020 to May 2021. The P means a priority call. So that's like an armed robbery in progress, a shooting, a homicide, a violent domestic that's in progress. Those kinds of calls are the priority calls. Then you have a priority 1, which is like a wreck with injuries, a priority 2, which is a crime that has occurred but is not necessarily in progress. And then the green priority 3 is like a report call. So you can see that our response time comparison has gone up 1 minute. 1 minute may not seem like a long time, but when you have somebody trying to kick your door in or actively assaulting you, a minute is a long time. And then you can see all the way to the priority 3 there, where it's gone from 26 minutes to 33 minutes. And all of this is on average response times. All right, next slide. So now I'll shift gears and talk about our attrition. So with the police department, since June 1st, 2020, we've had 98 officers resign. 1 resigned twice, 2 retired, and 2 were terminated. So looking at our years of experience, we've lost 580 years of combined experience. And that's a lot of relationships with the community that go with that. We've hired 49, and then 3 came back. Next slide. So looking at this year, what we've lost so far is we've lost 16 officers this year. We may lose another one next week. Sworn officers that are available to work. We have 155 officers available to work out of an allotted 238. Now, when you factor in various types of leave, injury, training, what we actually have is 144 out of an allotted 238. Now looking at these numbers, just to put it in context, when I was hired by the police department in 1998, we had more officers than we have right now. We were closer to the 150 number, and that was with probably about 30,000 less residents, 30,000 less residents back then. So looking at our total reduction percentage in staffing, this is a 40% reduction in our staff. That's in our, when I say staffing, that's sworn personnel that are available to answer calls for service. All right, next slide. So looking at our hiring, 2022, thankfully, we had 12 new officers that completed their basic training and were recently sworn in. They started field training this month, so they're out in phase 1 of their field training right now. We have 9 new officers that completed field training and started solo this spring, and that they are now working patrol. We have 12 new cadets that are currently in BLET and set to graduate November, December. And the thing that's causing us concern right now is we had a good run. We had 9 officers go through, and they're on their own now. We had 12 that are now in training and 12 cadets in BLET. The problem is right now we only have 4 people that are in our hiring process. Now, these are officers, or these are candidates that have not been through a background investigation, not been through a polygraph exam, not been through their psychological. So out of this 4, they'll be weeded down depending on what the hiring process, what the results of the hiring process are. We are committed to hiring quality and hiring quality cadets, and we're not reducing our qualifications or expectations for our cadets. So it's usually we have 15 that are in the hiring process now. So that's really causing us a lot of concern. Is this going to be the trend? Because we may only put 1 or 2 in BLET for the winter BLET class that will come up. And as you can see, even with the new officers that are in training, we've lost 16 this year, so we'll just be a little bit ahead of what we are.
Mike?
Yes.
I've got a quick question. What's the starting salary now for APD officers?
So starting salary is 47 and change.
Okay.
Is what the starting salary is.
Okay.
Yes, you've got, I think Winston starting is up to 58. which I'll talk about that a little bit more in the
Okay.
next couple of slides.
Thanks.
So yes, no problem. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking at district staffing. So in 2020, Charlie District was combined with David District due to staffing. For you to remember, as a reminder, the Charlie District was its own district. So it was the central business district, and it was staffed with 34 officers. After the resignations, we could no longer staff and have a concentration of officers downtown and still be able to quickly respond to calls for service throughout the city. So again, to keep our response times level, we had to distribute officers evenly throughout the city so that we could have an adequate response time to crime in progress calls. So like downtown coverage went from 8, like on a shift, having at least 8 officers to now it's down to 2 officers within the downtown area. Currently, there are 3 districts. We used to have 5, actually. We had Adam Baker, 4, Adam Baker, Charlie David, and now we've combined Charlie David, so we're down to 3 districts. And then our daily average for officers per district is 5 or 6 officers. Again, that's comparable to when I was working West Asheville in 1998, when we had 4 officers for all of West Asheville. But our call volume is much higher. We looked at calls for service and how many calls for service the average officer is taking now compared to 2019, and officers are working 50% harder than they were back then as far as calls for service. So that means, I mean, it's basically we're being reactionary. And so as far as any proactive work, like radar enforcement, crime prevention in certain areas, officers during the peak times are just running call to call to call with calls, waiting in the stack once that officer clears a call. So one thing that throws a wrench into things is when we have an unplanned protest that occurs within like the central business district, in order to make sure that everyone is safe, especially with protesters, counter protesters, we have to pull officers from each district to make sure that we have an adequate presence and coverage downtown. So, we're thankful for the groups that do notify us, hey, we're going to have an event this Saturday, this Sunday, what have you, and then we can plan accordingly. But when it's the spontaneous ones, that's what impacts district staffing and response times throughout the city for the whole city. All right, next slide. So burnout's a big thing now, especially this summer. In addition to the 2 officers assigned to downtown extra duty, officers work extra coverage to provide extra duty to provide downtown coverage. And then they also work extra overtime in order to fill the assignments throughout the city. So if a district is down because somebody called in sick, like we have 1 or 2 officers that are out with COVID right now, we have to bring in officers overtime in order to fill those shifts. The problem is these assignments are only being filled at about a 48-50% fill rate. And the same thing with security jobs. If a business or somebody wants to hire an officer off duty to be there, those jobs are only being filled at 48-50%. So it's even with the extra duty shifts and extra money that officers are able to make, we're seeing where officers are just getting burnt out. And if they work a weekend and then they have another weekend that they work extra, that'll be the whole month, especially if they're called in for a protest, that'll be the whole month that they don't see their families, since if they're working every weekend. And additionally, officers are required to work extra to help cover special events and protests. All right, next slide. So our recruiting work, we regularly, in order to get officers here, we regularly attend career fairs and we run testing on a more frequent basis. Used to be we would have a set number of testing dates. We've increased that to where anybody that wants to come in, do the physical portion, do the 10th grade reading test, the reading comprehension test. We run extra testing cycles so that we can get as many cadets in as possible to try to fill our vacancies. As you've seen in the news, we also contracted with Epic Recruiting Firm to develop website materials and videos that they're currently finalizing. And we've looked at some of the videos and the web page that they've designed, and it's well produced and it looks really good. And I've got an example of it on the next slide. If you want to go ahead, next slide, Rick. So that's this is still a work in progress, but it's close to being finalized. This will be like what the landing page will look like when people click to see what opportunities APD has to offer. And so we've got 2 officers there. Join the Asheville Police Department, calibrate your compass, chart a course, choose a path. We really wanted to take advantage of what's offered in the area with the mountains, with the parkway, with a lot of the attractions and features that we have in and around Asheville. So that'll be our landing page, and then there'll be additional items that you can scroll down and see as far as opportunities that the Asheville Police Department has. Next slide, please, Rick. So what our difficulties are is that the material looks really good. The videos are very well produced, but what the material and the videos do is they direct a potential applicant to our hiring page. And when they get there, they click and then they see our salary and benefits. So our salary and benefits, they're at market. They're comparable with other law enforcement agencies in the region, in the Asheville area, surrounding counties area, but they are not competitive. You know, as I said earlier, Highway Patrol is closer to 50,000 starting with a hiring bonus. We have Winston-Salem is at 58,000 with their starting pay, and that's 58 is our top out pay for an officer. So it's just really not competitive. We've if you look at people will click on the web page to see what we have to offer salary and benefit wise, and then they start looking for a place to stay. They look for an apartment, a house, and they see what our housing costs are here in Asheville, and our average rent, which I think the last thing I heard was that average rent for a 1-bedroom in Asheville is $1,600 a month. We had a young lady from Greensboro PD, and she wanted to do a lateral transfer over to Asheville Police Department. She was really excited to have the possibility of coming on to Asheville PD. And then she saw what rent was in Asheville. And she told our recruiting sergeant, I would love to be there. I just can't afford to live in Asheville. So she pulled out of the process with us, and we lost a potential applicant there. So on top of that, when you add lack of community support, lack of community support combined with not having a competitive salary, high housing cost, it really hampers our abilities to attract recruits. So one example of the community support is our National Night Out example. I don't know if y'all know, but National Night Out, it's neighborhood based, and it's next week. It's August 2nd. National Night Out is historically been an opportunity for communities to get together. You get to break bread, talk with your neighbors, have a good time, and then meet officers that are within the police department, because they come to the different neighborhood events, picnics, and stuff like that. Thus far this year, we have not received any requests from any neighborhoods to attend any neighborhood National Night Out event. We've had several corporations and businesses that have offered to provide snacks, coffee, drinks, what have you, for these events, but we've not had anybody reach out to our community unit or community resource officers stating that they are going to have a National Night Out event and they wanted to invite the police department. And it's a perfect opportunity to build a relationship with officers and publicly show them support. So next slide, please.
I think that's it.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to mention is, people, one of the questions was, what can we as neighborhoods do? in order to show support, to try to help with recruiting. And it's y'all have been in Asheville for a while, and you understand how Asheville works, how Asheville politics works, and it's always been the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So what does city council hear every city council session? Defund the police. We do alternate programs than the police, give the money back to the people. So that's one public way to be able to state, please support our police department. Please ensure that they have competitive pay to attract. We've got a great webpage, a great recruitment material, but we have to have the salaries and the bonuses to be able to go along with that. One example of that is we have a sergeant. She's going to submit her resignation next week. As a sergeant, she is making probably, I think, around 60,000, and she is going to transfer to Winston-Salem PD and for 6,000 more as a police officer. So she's going from a years of experience, 15 years of experience sergeant here at APD to Winston-Salem as a line level brand new police officer, and is going to get a $6,000 raise compared to here. And she's getting a $10,000 sign-on bonus. I don't understand sometimes that you have other departments, other entities here in Asheville that have sign-on bonuses, but we don't have one within the police department. But that's also, that being said, we also have to make sure that we retain officers first before we can get officers in, because we have to stop the bleeding before we can infuse blood there. So it's it's Winston's been, they put the billboard out in West Asheville, and they've been actively recruiting APD officers to try to get there, and there may be one or two more that may go down to Winston-Salem is what we're hearing. There is another sergeant that we've lost, years of experience from Asheville, born and raised, and he's going to, or he's already left, and he started with Wake Forest PD. And so it's, I think the two main things are competitive salaries, benefits, and then public support for the police department. And that's the main reason that we heard and saw, and during exit interviews, when people said they were leaving, those were the two main reasons why. So I'm happy to take any questions that the group may have.
Joe, I see your hand, and then Debbie.
Yeah, I've got two questions. On your statistics, is there a breakdown of the victims, whether they're local or visitors?
Yeah, that's a good question, Joe. I think Doug has that, and I think he's put that out in the past. And I know we have we do NIBRS now instead of UCR reporting, so it's National Incident-Based Reporting System, and the FBI keeps stats on all of that. And so I'll see if I can find it. You've got the FBI actually has a breakdown of what our victimology looks like. So I just pulled up the website. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation Crime Data Explorer. So the web address is crime-data-explorer.fr.cloud.gov, and this page is home. And then you can go to a state from there, and then you can go to Asheville, and it'll give you a breakdown of our victim demographics, which if you type in Asheville in the agency, click agency select, the looks like the most current year they have is 2020. So it'll give you 2020 stats, but it'll show you from 2010 to 2020, and you can see just to continual upward climb in violent crime. And then it also gives you, if you go down to the bottom of the page, it says all violent crime offender versus victim demographics. And so I'll give you that webpage again. It's Federal Bureau of Investigation, Crime Data Explorer, and it's crime-data-explorer.fr.cloud.gov, and then /pages/home. And just go to North Carolina and then go to Asheville, and it'll give you that. The last year was 2020, and it'll give you a breakdown of demographics.
Okay, and the other question I had was, how are you doing as far as hiring women and minorities?
Not as well as we want to be. Definitely, we want to have an equal representation of the demographics of the city within the police department. One place that you can see that at is we have a transparency dashboard, which is having some glitches on the crime data for 2022, but it's got our breakdown in demographics for the whole police department. This last class, we were able to hire, let's see, one female, one biracial male, and then I think 2 or 3 Latin descent males, and then the rest are white males. So within this next class, we have 1 African-American female, and we have, I think, 1 Hispanic male, and then the rest are white males. So we would love to have a better demographic representation of the city of Asheville, but again, that's got to it's got to come along with competitive pay, because if you are an African-American and Hispanic officer or female, and there's a lot of other places you can go for a lot more money depending on what you're looking for. So that just goes again to stress the importance of being competitive in our salaries.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, Joe.
Sharon.
Hey, Captain Lamb, it's Sharon Summerall, the beleaguered property manager at 4 South Tunnel Road. I have a comment and 2 comments and a question. I was wondering why we don't have a person of color on the front of that video. You've got 2 white men on that showing 2 officers, and I would suggest to diversify that cover a bit.
Rick, can you pull that back up, possibly?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, that's just a comment to add. There's 2 white men on there. So I've been on that property 7, 8 years. And it's not that I'm going to question stats, because I don't know anything about them, but I do know that my problems over at 4 South Tunnel Road, are they 2 white men?
No, one's white, one's African-American, one's a black
Oh,
man.
yes. All right,
Yes.
so my color on my computer needs to be cleared up.
Oh yeah, no worries. And there's like the next slide is a female officer. So yes, we do have a diverse representation,
Oh, great.
both on the website and also within the videos as well.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
But thank you for that suggestion, just to make sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I have called officers more this year with problems, and had more robberies, and well, you know the story. I've told you this year, it's literally tripled than any other year. So I'm only one little spot on Tunnel Road, and I'm looking over for commercial and on that list that you showed, and I do not see Tunnel Road listed on there for reporting on how many reports are occurring. And I know myself that I have called many, too many times. So somehow it seems skewed to me, only because of my experience this year as compared to the previous 8 years of being on that property. Not
Well,
to
and-
say that your stats aren't right, but. I
Yeah.
just don't
Well,
think-
and the breakdown
Tunnel
of
Road might be
property,
on Kenilworth.
yeah, the breakdown for property crime was for residential neighborhoods, not for commercial areas. So that's why it does look different, and that's why it's not shaded for South Tunnel, since South Tunnel is primarily a commercial area and not a residential area. But you are right. We have, as far as crime hotspots go, I mean, all of Tunnel and South Tunnel, from the tunnel all the way to South Tunnel, and then all of South Tunnel all the way down to Wood Avenue is a property crime hotspot and a violent crime hotspot. So that's, you're 100% right. And that area also contributes to that 100 additional violent crime incidents that we've had over this last year.
Which brings me to the last time I talked to you, I had I had my chronic homeless camp behind that center. I got it cleared out a month ago, and frankly, I just can't bring myself to go back there but once a month. And I went back yesterday, and I've got people, I mean, it's trashed once again. And when I was gone out of town, they came in, and which brings me to the question on the, I don't know who came in and cleaned it up, but it's the, what do you call the group of people that are coming in and taking with the hazmat suits that are picking up all the, literally the crap that's all over everywhere.
Yeah,
And-
both the city and Department of Transportation and a lot of private entities have to contract out their services because of the amount of biohazard, namely needles, that are left behind within these areas.
Which brings me to when I went back yesterday, I've got a whole huge mess back there once again. And so I just haven't had the wherewithal to sit down and send out emails to all the organizations that I have on my email list. Because normally I've been dealing with it and I just can't deal with it anymore. Even though it is private property, it's the property, the people that own the shopping center, it's become overwhelming for me and them to deal with it. And I didn't know how the statistics are working out with those additional people that are helping or not helping the police department in this cleanup process. Or the homeless, like I went down yesterday and said they all had to leave, but I haven't gone down today to see if the 5 tents are gone,
Yes. Yeah, and this, the city is contracted with the National Alliance to End Homeless as far as suggestions on how to make things better. And so they're going through that process right now. And I think, or sometime during the winter is when they'll come out with their recommendations as far as what the city can do to try to help the situation. And it's usually several of the other agencies that contract with folks to help do the cleanup. But the problem is, once we clean up, a couple of months later, somebody comes back, and it's really helpful when we do get calls and tips like, hey, we know this area was clean last week. Looks like somebody's going back to set up again, because it's much easier to offer outreach and then dissuade folks from camping when you have 1 or 2 tents as opposed to 5 or 6 or 7 or 70 as we've seen in the past.
Right, now interrupting anybody else is trying to talk, but are you noticing any relief from the officers in these other organizations and helping you out at all? Is there are you noticing any relief in the officers in the field with these other people that are coming in to supposedly help with the encampments?
Not really.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm not seeing it either. Okay, I just wanted to verify that I'm not the only one seeing what's going on, that it's not working.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I also want to say your officers have been out way quicker than they have previously. So I don't know if they're slower everywhere else, but they're coming out to me very quickly and helping me out there. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Susan, wait a minute, where'd she go? There she is. Victoria, Debbie, and Alan. That's the order so far. Susan
Okay.
or Suzanne, please.
Suzanne, hi. Thank you. I live in the South French Broad neighborhood, and
for at least a year now, at least a year ago, we have our neighborhood meetings, and we reported to the officer who is able to attend our meetings at that time that there's an ongoing increasing problem with the Murray Hill Park that's right next to the Overlook Apartments.
Yes.
And there's a whole new, harder, different crowd, and the prostitution and the drug dealing is just blatant. I walk up there every day, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're all pulling in, pulling out, women getting into the cars. The needles now are all over the ground. There's trash everywhere. One area has now become the public toilet. It's getting worse and worse, and it seems beyond just homeless camping. I mean, drug dealing is criminal, and I'm not sure what you guys can do. Being understaffed, I don't know if there's anything we as a neighborhood can do. They've driven people out of the park. People that I used to see walking their dogs every day no longer go there. People sure don't take their kids there anymore. They've destroyed everything, and there's just trash everywhere. And I just don't know what we could do, or what the police can do, or if there's something we as a neighborhood who we should contact. It sounds like the police don't have the staff to do it. I don't know. I guess I just want to report that and ask if there's anything that can be done.
Yeah, right. So you're 100% right about our staffing, and as you know, I don't like sounding hopeless because I'm an optimist, but we, in order to address street level drug dealing and also prostitution, you have to have a unit who specializes in that. And it has to be a combination of uniformed officers and also undercover officers. We don't have many at all. And, 2 years ago, Chief Zach, with our staffing, had taken the priority off low level drugs, had disbanded our drug suppression unit. And then those officers became our impact unit. And impact unit's main focus is to focus on shooters, people that shoot other people. And especially with the increase in the gunshots that we've had over the last 3 years, increase in shootings, gun discharges, and people shot, that with our limited resources, we had to focus on what was most important. And that has been those shootings. So that team, that's what their primary focus is shootings and shooters. So if there's a violent crime nexus to it, then that area will get attention. But until we can get back to being fully staffed, I mean, it's hard to address things like that because, even if we have an officer that does a ride through, as the officer's there with the patrol car and the cruiser lights, those blue lights on the end, it will dissuade anybody from doing anything there while the officer's there. But then that officer is going to get a call for service. And like I said earlier, currently our officers are running from call to call to call. Like, looking at the screen right now, there's 7 calls in the stack waiting to be dispatched because officers aren't available. So, that's another reason why it's so important to show support, publicly show support, and then so that we can get more recruits, quality recruits, so that we can get back to fully staffed so that we can address those things. Now one recommendation that I have that we've seen other neighborhoods do is they do programming within their public spaces. So picnics, walks, gatherings for the neighborhood to be able to utilize there will oftentimes push other activity away. That's one thing we've seen that neighborhoods can do for crime prevention. And if you want to do that, and then you would like to have an officer stop by, if an officer is available between calls for service, then we can definitely do that. Stop by and say, hey, if there's a picnic, and just hang out for a couple minutes. But that's the one recommendation, is to have neighborhood programming of your own within the park. and then, possibly invite other neighbors, other neighborhoods.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And hopefully the guy's turned his bass down now. I personally had a one-on-one talk with him about the music going 24/7.
He
And
has. He has.
yeah, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
One small victory. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we take it one thing at a time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, next is labeled Victoria Williamson, but you don't look like a Victoria, so.
No, I'm her husband, Larry.
Okay.
I wanted to backtrack to recruiting, but we came back to it anyway. There is a basic law enforcement training program at McDowell Tech. Is there one at AB Tech or in any other of the counties west in Western North Carolina, other than McDowell? And do you approach McDowell with your recruiting? Surely you do.
Yes.
And how many programs are there around in the community college system in the state?
So there's several. Of course, AB Tech is easiest for us because it's based in the Buncombe County Emergency Services Training area, which is in Woodfin, and they've been a great partner with us from 2005 to around 2012. We used to run our own in-house academy, so all the cadets were here at APD, and it was all APD instructors. When Chief William Anderson came in, he started that partnership back up with AB Tech, and we've been running BLET classes through AB Tech ever since then. Now, there are other programs that we recruit at and we pull from with quality cadets, and that's McDowell. McDowell's always been a great partner, and we even send some of our officers down to attend in-service classes at McDowell. Same thing with Blue Ridge Community College, with Haywood Community College, and also with Southwestern Community College out in Jackson County. So all of those are great partners of ours. And those are the primary ones that are within either Buncombe County or one of the neighboring counties.
Right.
Yeah, we'll even go as far as Morganton also at, what is that? Catawba, yes. Down at Catawba County.
Yeah, I recognize that there's a tremendous amount of stress in city policing, and running from calls to call does not allow that release of stress. It just builds it, and that builds incidents. And I hear you say you're an optimist, and
Yes.
that's the kind of police officers that are needed. It's hard to remain optimistic. In terms of Asheville, do you believe that the police department may have turned a couple of degrees towards keeping all the officers as optimists? I mean, how are you doing? Because, some of the incidences are a result of stupidity that was of the moment, I'm sure.
Yes.
But officers, there are some bad officers, and you need to get rid of them, and you gotta get good people, and more money would help. So I'll shut up and let you tell us about it.
Well, yeah, and this, when an officer does something out of line, it's like, say, in Washington State, all officers across the nation are affected by it. Whenever you have, there's over 700,000 law enforcement officers across the nation. And so you're going to have, officers that make, whether they're intentional or not, which some of them are, that they make bad decisions. Sometimes that can come from trauma or not handling trauma well, which we see traumatic things all the time. We had a bad motorcycle accident last night on Smoky Park Highway. These officers that are going to these shootings are having to apply tourniquets, render medical aid, and at the same time watch their back to make sure the shooter's not there. So, at almost daily basis, these officers are seeing very traumatic things. Now, thankfully, in 2020, we started a couple of different programs that are for support for our officers. Now, we've had a chaplains program for years, and our chaplains are excellent. They do ride-alongs. They check with the officers. They build relationships and take officers out to eat, check on their families. So that's one program that we have. We also have an embedded mental health services program through Responder Services, and they have been a great tool to have. I had to go to them after I was involved in a shooting in 2018, and they were wonderful. And it helps when our officers go through something traumatic. For my shooting, I was attacked by a guy with a box cutter. He cut me several places on my body. I had to have surgery, but came through that physically and mentally well because of the services that are offered to us. And we also have a good peer support program. So we have officers that if they've been through identical situations, or if they're trained in critical incident management, individual or group management, that they make contact with the officers. Everything that is told is confidential, but the primary thing is to make sure that the officer is well, the officer's family is well, and that they're employing positive coping strategies. I don't know if you've seen on the news, we've started a yoga program this summer, and that was a partnership with a yoga instructor that teaches yoga and exercise physiology for AB Tech. And that's helped our officers to work on breathing, mobility, staying calm within stressful situations, but also how to regulate themselves after an incident has occurred. So, and then we've had some yoga therapists from Mission Hospital also reach out to one of our officer services. So we're very thankful, and we're blessed that we have a variety of support services within the police department throughout, that we contract with. And we've got a wellness proposal within the city that we're hoping will go forward to increase our officers' physical fitness preparedness also, because sometimes you see the officers that have maybe a little extra girth more than they should, and you wonder how they can chase down somebody. But it's we would like all of our officers to be physically fit so that they can be functionally fit to protect our public, but at the same time be able to enjoy retirement through having a healthy heart, low stress, and all that. So yeah, we're very blessed in that we do have those programs. Thank you, Larry.
Debbie.
Mike, recently in Beverly Hills, we had a situation where car was parked, people were slumped over, 911 was called, they were ODs. Narcan was administered and they were allowed to go on their merry little way. Now, my concern, and I've spoken at length with a fireman who explained to me about the community paramedic program, where the community paramedics are responding to these OD calls, and they're waving off the rest of the fire department, and usually there isn't a police officer available. Now, my concern is that what we're fostering here is a revolving door where it's perfectly okay to get high and end up needing Narcan and then sent on their merry way. Now, he explained to me that when the community paramedic responds, they get all the information, the name, the address, the phone number, they attempt contact, they try to get these people into programs. But my concern is, where's APD's involvement in tracking down the source of the drugs? Not the fact that this bozo OD'd, but where did he get the drugs?
Yeah.
And you guys are not involved in this.
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on the call. Like if officers are tied up and a community paramedic gets there first, yes, an officer won't respond. If anytime there's an OD death, we always respond, and right. we complete an incident report for that, so that if we can find who the dealer is, they can be charged with manslaughter, second-degree murder, and we've done that in a handful of cases over the last several years, where the OD death, we were able to figure out who sold them the drugs and then charge them accordingly. But it's, with staffing, it's a struggle because we can't get to all these OD calls, and we're thankful that the community paramedics are taking some of them for us, and we're also thankful for the help that they give us with, mental health calls, because a lot of times they know who some of these folks are and can get them, into the hospital for treatment or commitment. But we still have to go typically because we're the only ones that can transport them from whatever location they're at to the hospital. And then we're the only ones by law that can do the intake process with them, especially for involuntary commitments.
Well, in the case of this particular situation, it was a weekday morning. And those people ended up on Swananoa River Road. Now, I would think as a driver, you might expect an impaired driver on Swananoa River Road on Friday night or Saturday night, but on a Tuesday morning well before noon, that's not expected. But it's a very real possibility. We saw it happen.
Yeah, you can see, with our crash rates, with our accident rates, you see it every day when you're driving, folks that are either driving distracted, driving high, or driving drunk. And it's just another thing that hurts that is our ability to be proactive, like as far as running radar, doing like for a community that has complaints about stop signs, doing stop sign enforcement, with officers running from call to call. Again, that's what really hurts with us not being able to be out there and be proactive and just be, for the most part, reactive because of our numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Debbie.
Lynn. Alan, you're up.
Mike, point of information, somebody brought up about cleaning up the homeless encampments. I think it was Sharon. The city did hire a company, Bio One is their name, and they're on contract right now. They're cleaning up human waste, unfortunately, sharps that potentially carry bloodborne diseases, and they do come out in hazmat suits. So I don't know how often they do work encampments, but they are on the payroll now with the city.
Yeah, and they do a lot. So the reality behind encampments is if we send an officer or two to go out to an encampment with a couple of tents, we give our, like a 24-hour notice. And a lot of times what we're seeing happen is folks will leave and then they'll leave the tent shell up. And so the person that we told to leave leaves, but then somebody else comes in and occupies that tent shell. And then, we have to wait typically for the cleanup services. So what we're finding works the best is if you have the possibility of enforcement, like our enforcement action, we very rarely charge any kind of trespassing charges, because typically whenever somebody sees an officer, sees a cleanup crew standing there, we'll give a 24-hour notice to let them know it's coming. And then, but when they see the cleanup crew and the officer, that's when they'll gather everything they can, or gather everything. Like we went out yesterday and addressed the tents that are there at 240 Klingman, along 240 East up towards Montford, and then the ones that were under the 240 bridge at Lexington and Merriman. So those were out yesterday. DOT came out and they had to, they cleaned up very little things. Everybody that was there saw what was happening, had a 24-hour advance notice. When they saw the trucks pull up, they realized it was serious, and then they cleaned up their own stuff and left. And just some of the waste and stuff that was left behind was all that had to be cleaned up, which is much better compared to what we experienced in 2021, where there were thousands of pounds that were having to be cleaned up by bulldozers and backhoes and put into dump trucks. So, but yeah, Bio One's been great, and I know they helped with the Murray Hill encampment back there, where there were several tents all through there. So we're appreciative of that contract.
Anything else, Alan?
That's it. Thanks.
Margit. Margit, your turn.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys, because every interaction I've had with the police has been positive. And they came when my father died, and I don't think I've had kinder people to deal with. And I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you. Yeah. We we appreciate that. We thank you very much, because we don't hear that as much. So, and our officers don't. And I don't know if y'all saw on Facebook, we put it out today. We had one of our officers went to a welfare check, and it was a couple that was camping up behind O'Charlie's by extended stay up on Kenilworth Knolls. And it was a family. They had 3 kids, 14, 9, and 5 years old. And a humble family that had, the wife had got a job at Ingalls. The husband recently got just some side jobs, and they were here from Arkansas, and their car broke down. And I'm not sure if they came here intentionally or were traveling through when their car broke down, but they, the officers that went out there, they told them their story. And then one of the officers took it upon himself to get them to get the family a hotel room for that night. So got them a hotel room at the, I think the Sunspree, if I remember correctly. And then worked with our victims advocates, with Rain and Tammy, to get them Greyhound tickets, because they wanted to go back home to Arkansas where they could have family and support. And so at 3:45 on Monday morning, community engagement officers drove them to the Greyhound station and got them on the Greyhound with the tickets and sent them on their way to be back home with family. So we're when you say our officers have good hearts, I mean, we routinely see like officers who they see a kid whose bike's been stolen, a handful of them will get together, buy him a bike. We had one officer, a kid had his TV busted in a domestic violence situation, and him and his partner went and bought the kid a brand new TV. So we've got all these stories that just don't make it out in the news, but that are there. So yeah, thank you so much, Margie, for saying that.
Debbie.
One bit of promotion. Next Wednesday morning, 9 to 11, is Coffee with a Cop at the Mosaic Cafe in Biltmore Park. So everybody's welcome to go. These are great, and you'll get to meet numerous officers. So try to go.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we'll have another one after that. I think it's going to be August. Let's see. Yep, August 18th, 9 in the morning at the Starbucks there in Hendersonville Road, where the old Howard Johnson used to be, right there up south of Biltmore Village. So if you can't make the one next Wednesday at Mosaic Coffee in Biltmore, we'll have one at Starbucks on August the 18th as well.
Great, thanks. Questions from anybody else? I got a couple. I'm looking at the ones that people sent in, so I'm going to hit a couple of those. But by all means, if it triggers another question from anybody, raise your hand and I'll put you up. And I'm gonna be a little selfish. My neighborhood's Kenilworth Forest. 90% of the incident reports over the last 3 years have come from a little apartment complex at 25 White Pine Drive, which is a subsidized apartment complex. Does the landlord have any responsibility if they have recurring crime in their apartments? I mean, is there another channel to try to improve something if that's where all the crime is occurring in our neighborhood?
So yes, I mean, there's always the possibility of nuisance abatement. I mean, we had one house off of Bull Mountain, off Governor's View in East Asheville, that there was a lot of crime that was originating from that house, between car break-ins, larceny from under vehicles, and other stuff. And we started looking at a nuisance abatement case, where what happens is if there's there's nothing done to correct that issue by the property owner, their property can be civilly seized if they're just letting this crime continue to happen. Now, that is a long and arduous process. But that's the only one that we've had in recent years where we did have an actual selling of the property that occurred because of it. But, there are, I think that's another good question for maybe developmental services as far as any other issues that may be coming from that apartment. But that's the most immediate thing that I know, other than, addressing each individual criminal issue is saying, if the property owner is not being responsible for the activity there, after they're notified, then, then that nuisance abatement case is a possibility.
Does the apartment owner get notified when there's an incident in their apartment building? I mean, how do they know if they're having, other than following APD to public stuff?
Yeah, not necessarily, which it looks like there's been several overdoses there, some civil disturbance. I'm guessing, I think that the landlord is probably trying to address some of the issues, because just in this last month, we've had 2 landlord-tenant dispute calls there. So, and it's been difficult for landlords over this last couple of years with the halting of evictions. And so you've had a lot of people that have kind of taken advantage of that with criminal activity also, since they can't be evicted. So, but it looks like, it looks like this month there's been 2 there, and a drug call, trespassing, a couple civil disturbances, a warrant service where someone was taken to jail from the apartment. So, and a handful of overdoses.
Yeah.
But it looks, based on the landlord tenant call I'm looking at, it looks like there's that the landlord's probably trying to address it.
Okay. So sort of connected to that, but a broader topic that we touched a little bit before you came on, as CAN gets engaged with the consultant on homelessness that's working through the city. I'm sure you're completely aware of the huge challenges East Asheville had around the Ramada thing. And eventually that will become permanent supportive housing. And my neighborhood is adjacent to the Days Inn, which is going to also become permanent supportive housing.
Yes.
And what I think we've heard is that even if the folks running those places do a tip-top job inside, which is pretty hard for them to do because the people are treated as tenants, it attracts undesirable elements of crime in the vicinity. What would you say are the lessons that APD learned from Ramada, and how would you advise neighborhoods that are going to be near the Ramada and near the Days Inn to prepare themselves, or what can we do?
So definitely to stay engaged with the different entities that will be managing. So, Days Inn's, Ramada is going to be Step Up, and then Days Inn is going to be Homeward Bound. There were a couple of lessons learned from both of these, with the Ramada, and then also with the Red Roof Inn, where some folks were put up there. And it's that whoever manages the area, the shelter, the apartments, has to understand and know like who is there, and there has to be a no guest policy. The problem with Ramada is that the management company didn't have the experience or the personnel to adequately really manage that. And so I really think they were trying their best. However, it was like the access control and the ability to control who comes and who goes was not there. So my understanding is with both of these complexes is that there's going to be a management team that will be there. there will be access control to where people cannot have guests. And in addition to that, you have to have embedded services there. So you have to have drug treatment, you have to have job counseling, you have to have other mental health counseling services that are there on site to be able to make sure that everything is under control and stable. But that fencing, that access control is vital, because with the Ramada, what we saw where there were a lot of drug dealers that were coming there within the vicinity to go to their, because their customer base. And then we also had people that were coming and going from the hotel rooms that were committing crimes or bringing criminal activity there. So so that was a big thing that was learned. And also it's, incumbent on both organizations, both Step Up and Homeward Bound, to be able to build networks within all the neighborhoods that are surrounding each of these locations, both the Days Inn and the Ramada, so that if there are issues, that is handled quickly. So if there's an issue with a certain client, with a certain resident, and it's impacting the neighborhood or surrounding businesses, that information is shared back and forth, and then it's handled before it gets out of control.
So thanks to that advice, it tells us that we're doing the right thing, because we're having a board meeting with the Homeward Bound leadership in about 3 weeks. And then we're going to have a community meeting. And I would love it if you or somebody from community engagement could come to our neighborhood. It'll probably be outside in our park. So I'll reach out to you after this, once we've got the date and time all set. And I promise to feed and provide, more officers could come. The guy who normally runs our national night out, he's on a 8-week camping trip with his kids before they all disappear and cease to be the kind of kids that want to go with them. So we didn't really have anybody to organize it this year, but normally we do.
Yes. Yeah. We'll be happy to help. I'm unfortunately down to one CRO. I don't know if you all have heard, but our other CRO, Lindsay Rose, she resigned the second time. So she's getting out of law enforcement. So I'm down to one, and I'm not sure about his status. So,
Okay.
I hope he stays on with us, but our experienced officers are getting a lot of job offers, and I think he's being poached. So, it's yeah. So thankfully I have Lieutenant Griffin and Sergeant Fry, and they are, they are on it always. And so between the three of us and Colby Fox, we try to handle as many issues that come up as possible. So if I'm not there, one of either Lieutenant Griffin, Sergeant Fry will probably be there.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions from anybody else? Okay, I think we've tortured you long enough, Captain Lamb. But
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for attending all this darn virtual stuff. It's not nearly as much fun as face-to-face, but since COVID keeps on rearing its darn ugly head and that sort of thing, I think we're learning how to try to make the best friends we can with little tiny screens about the size of, like that. So thank you, and thank everybody who attended. We'll be doing this again in about a month. And on that topic, since we touched a little bit here about homelessness and camping, we're gonna focus that general membership meeting on what's going on with homelessness in the city, and I'm sure there'll be some good debate and some good questions there too. So with that, I wish everybody a gorgeous evening.
Thank you very
Mike.
much.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.